businesses in Africa can be very challenging. In Nigeria, it is particularly intimidating, and successful builders have learned how to navigate a hostile environment to unlock opportunities. But one major challenge businesses face is how to filter through the noise and identify where their ideal customers exist. Get insight and practical steps from industry players and captains of industries. Hear success stories to help you make informed decisions as you scale your business in Nigeria. Watch Business Insights at this time on PlusTvAfrica.
Seize it for upcoming artists to blow in Nigeria.
Welcome to Plus Trending. I am Booking November, your host, saying thank you for joining us on today's episode.
Welcome back. It's tea time on PlusTvAfrica.
Practice makes perfect. I'm not perfect yet, but I'm a lot better than I used to be.
He's a king. He's entitled to marry 100 if he wants to.
A United Nations publication has detailed a secret government program tagged Sulu, designed to pull commanders of terrorist groups, including Boko Haram and the Islamic State for West Africa province, ISWAP, out of the forest, rehabilitate them, and provide them a means of livelihood. Now, the development comes as an intelligence agency began investigation into the recent surrender of over 1,200 terrorists and their families in the last 3 weeks. According to the report, the investigation seeks to ascertain whether the surrender was genuine or a ploy to activate and coordinate terror sleeper cells across the country. Now, security officials believe Sulu could open a door to a peace deal, ending a conflict that is now in its 12th year. But critics argue that such a deal would reward mass killers. Anyways, joining us to discuss this is Dixon Osagie and Efe Wanago, both of them security experts. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so I'm going to start with you, Dixon, because you're here in the studio, and I'm going to toss to Efe. But the first question that comes to everybody's mind is, are we trying to reward bad behavior here?
Oh, sure, we're trying to reward bad behavior. Yeah, we're trying to reward bad behavior. In the sense that most of these unnecessary human beings needed to pass through a procedure. That is the reason why I think the administration of criminal justice system has been defeated. Because the state governors or the government doesn't have that power to, at their own will, pardon terrorists. We're talking about terrorists here who have decimated a lot of human beings. You know, if you go to most of our barracks now, we have one of the largest, we have the most populous widows, you know, in our barracks. You know, our barracks accommodates more of widows, you know, who lost their husbands in the battlefield, and some of them amputated. Last week I was at Ojo Cantonment to celebrate with my classmates. We just marked our 23rd anniversary in the military. So I went to pay them a visit, and I saw some of them amputated, legs amputated, hands gone, and I felt so bad that if our government will have to tread on this path, you know, pardoning this criminal element without letting them pass through the administration of criminal justice system. The administration of criminal justice system comprises of the police, the court, and the prison. And the police needs to, you know, prepare the charges against these guys. Then the court needs to, you know, convict them. Then they let them go and pay the price for their offenses. But if we have them reintegrated into the society, definitely don't trust a terrorist. You understand? You and I saw what transpired in Afghanistan. It took Americans 20 years to build Afghanistan, and it took the Taliban 11 days. To take over Afghanistan. If you trust terrorists, you're going to be in danger. And some of these guys, if they are being reintegrated into the society, nobody knows their next plan of action. And if Nigerian government are not careful, they might be creating more dangers ahead of this great nation.
Efe, could it be that the federal government knows, you know, that this is a great way to end insurgency or terrorism in the country, and that's why they're taking this route? Do you think that maybe they've done due diligence and they feel that this is the best way to deal with it. Ife, can you hear me? Yes.
Yes. I do not have the information at their disposal, but whatever may be the reason, the motivation for kind of action, clearly it's a no-no for me because, like your guest in the studio, Dixon, has posited, I want to align myself entirely with him. You don't appease criminals. You know, people, and moreover, referred to the DSD report, the UN report, it's a clandestine program. It's not out there in the open. So there is nothing to give it credibility in the manner of speaking. And it is not as though you have been able to box the criminals, the terrorists into a corner, and then they have nowhere to go. They have been taken as prisoners, and then you have not gone through rehabilitation processes, and you want to reintegrate them. What we are doing basically is to appease criminals and to create an incentive for other would-be criminals to take to criminality. Persons who have killed Nigerians, who continue to kill members of the military and ordinary Nigerians, have been rewarded program to whatever. I've had problems from the.
Ife, I think we're having connection issues.
Different case. They did not engage in mass killing of Nigeria. They did not engage in killing the military.
I'm sorry, I think we're having connection issues, so we couldn't hear some of the things that you said, but I'll come back to you, Ife. Dikpa Olayoku is a journalist, and he's joining us also via Zoom. Mr. Olayoku, what about addressing the issues that brought about this insurgency in the first instance, the reasons why we are facing the kind of terrorism that we're facing today in Nigeria? Wouldn't that be a better way to deal with, this insurgency than, going about this rehabilitation process?
Sorry, I didn't get the beginning of that question.
So I'm saying, what about addressing the issues that brought about the insurgency? Lack of education, lack of infrastructure, poverty, unemployment. What if those things were addressed? Would that not be a better way of dealing with the problem? I mean, going to the root cause instead of trying to somewhat rehabilitate these terrorists?
Yes, if we are looking at the issue of Boko Haram, I think that is the one we are talking, that is the focus now. Because we are talking about repentant terrorists, I think this is a fallout of the news that we have been getting in the past 2 weeks when the Boko Haram guys are said to be surrendering in their thousands. I think there's need for you to understand that the case of the Boko Haram is like a case of religious extremism. So I think the best thing to do, which I think the government is already in, is a process or a program they call the radicalization of these guys. Because it is the teaching that is propelling some of the people to join them, and then that is propelling them to go into this act of terrorism. But I think that is not something that will take care of those people that are already in the field. I think the radicalization and then changing the modus, the method of preaching, which I think the government started some 6 or 7 years back, checking the type of preaching and teaching that some of these clerics teach to their followers. Because if you look at Boko Haram, if you look at their teaching, it is to the extreme. Some of them seem the loggerhead with them, and that is why the Boko Haram guys believe that they are the authentic ones because they are to the extreme. So anything short of their own belief to them is a kafiri. Hello?
Mr. Olayoku, when you say that de-radicalization would be the solution, I'd like to take you back to the fact that these people, there's been a set that was so-called de-radicalized. And we hear from the same Nigerian army that some of these people went back and became informants and moles for Boko Haram. So really, I ask my question again. Should we not be addressing the root cause of the problem instead of trying to put a plaster on the cancer?
That's why I said it's a two-pronged approach. While you are trying to de-radicalize the people that are already in the field, that already have been brainwashed into believing what Boko Haram preaches, there's a need for the government, which I think they are doing, to take a second look or critical look at the type of preaching that is being dished out That's what I said. That and you listen to some clerics, you wonder the type of teaching they are giving out, which to some extent has given rise to this extremism. Religion should be a matter of moderation. But when it is not only in the Islam world or Muslims that you have extremism. So I think while the government is trying to de-radicalize those people that are already there, that have been captured into the fold, I think what the government should also do, which I think they're doing, and they should say more attention into it, is the type of preaching that gave rise to the Boko Haram in the Islamic schools, in the mosques. There's the need for government to regulate, so to speak, let us use the word regulate, or to moderate, so that people that are teaching religion in the churches, in the mosque especially, don't give rise to the kind of teaching that these Boko Haram guys have embraced. Because if you listen to them, for example, we are looking at Talibans that have taken over in Afghanistan now. They are Muslims, but there are other Muslims that believe that they are to the extreme. So I think the government has a lot of work to do, and that is where the NOA comes into place. That is National Education Agency. This is the area where I think they should be doing more. Sorry, I think something just happened to my lips.
Okay. Dixon, back to you. Is this a quick fix? Because he's saying the government probably is going in the right direction and de-radicalization can work. But the fact that it's been shrouded in so much secrecy, doesn't it call to question how government is going about it and the army?
You say if it's a quick fix, I think yes, it's a terrible fix, and it's going to be detrimental to the survival of Nigeria. First of all, we need to understand that ideological-driven war is different from other driven war, just like what transpired in the Niger Delta and some other part of the world. This ideological-driven war is a war that perhaps could take till eternity. You can't tell somebody, for example, I'm a Christian. There is nothing you're going to tell me about Jesus Christ today or the opposite side of Jesus that I will believe, because that is my faith. I understand. And most of these guys, they are being brainwashed in the sense that they believe that when they take out an infidel, they have a place in heaven, kept for them. And that is why, like the last speaker rightly said, we need to start looking into religious brutality because sometimes we always believe that in our climb here, we're suffering from police brutality. Police brutality is the least problem we have here in Nigeria. We need to look into religious brutality. We also need to look into psychological and ethnocentric brutality, tribal brutality, because Nigeria, looking at the ethnography of Nigeria, Nigeria is a massive nation, and the diversity of our tongues is also a natural problem itself. So for me, I would advise the federal government to be very, very careful because you can't trust a terrorist. You can't trust a killer. If somebody can go to that extent to eliminate human lives and you think you can bring it back to the society, then they must go to all the prison in Nigeria and release all the criminals. Those ones that stole Maggi, those ones that stole pepper and salt, let them go and release everybody in prison, because I don't think this is a good way or a good notion. And that is why the state of insecurity sprang up, because sometime last 2 years, I advised the Katsina State governor to be very careful about negotiation, because you don't negotiate with the enemy. And if you must negotiate with the enemy, you must negotiate from the side of strength and not on the side of weakness. When you sit on the side of weakness and negotiate with your enemy, your survival will be very, very, will be at risk. That is why banditry sprang up in the Southwest, because of these negotiation skills. And these kidnappers, they believe that, hey, you can make money by illegally transporting our people. And you can see from the Southwest in the past, from the Northwest in the past 2-3 months now, the illegal exportation or transportation of our students in school is becoming worrisome. Nigeria is a treatise, is a signatory to the Safe School Declaration in Oslo, Norway, 2015. And we are not abiding by that Safe School Declaration in protecting our children from the hands of this unnecessary human being or criminal elements. So for me, what I want the federal government to do, they must be very careful not to certify crime, because certifying crime is, believing that those that commit this heinous crime, they should be forgiven. Oh yes, I'm not against them surrendering, but surrendering could be deceptive. I'm a trained soldier. For the fact that somebody surrendered in the battlefield, you need to analyze the reason why he surrendered in the battlefield. Perhaps the high-powered fire, the Tucano bombardment, the Air Force bombardment, the artillery bombardment, the armor bombardment is too heavy for them to contain, and they all come out to surrender. You have to understand that surrendering was based on high firepower. But if that surrendering is of true conscience and they believe that what they are doing against the Nigerian state is really erroneous, then we can take that surrendering as a true surrendering. Surrendering could be deceptive, and let us not jubilate or rejoice over them surrendering, because surrendering could be deceptive, and it could be a formation in which they need to fall back, have a plan B and strike the government again. So if the government think they want to continue to negotiate these guys, I am telling you that the government are certifying crime, and that tells you people from all parts of Africa will have to come into Nigeria because they'll believe that Nigeria is a prone environment where people can commit crime and go scot-free. And we also need to, we have a lot to do, Mary Ann. We need to go into the effectiveness of our administration of criminal justice system. When you commit a crime, you need to be punished. Punishment is very essential. If you don't punish people for what they do, our crime will continue to flourish from the east, west, south, and north. But the government, if truly the report from the United Nations is true, it's going to be a shame, and they must return our Tucano back to America and collect back our change, because we expected that Tucano to come and perform wonders. Tucano is built to contain with
but I mean, I'm going to come back to that, because that's a case on its own, and the Senate and the senators who sat on that, who put a pause on it, have their reasons. We'll come back to that. But I'm back to you, Ife. I hope you can hear me. Security officials, according to this UN report, believe that this strategy, this Sulham strategy of theirs, could open the door to a peace deal and and end this stalemated war, this guerrilla warfare that has been on for more than a decade. So I'm wondering to myself, do you think, Ife, that this is the way to go? Oh, I think we lost a face. So let me go to you, Mr. Layoku. The same question. Security operatives, our own security officials, think that this is a great idea. This is the way to go. They think that this will open a door to a peace deal. But I'd also like to put it in there that there are victims. There are people who their family members have been killed, have been missing for years. They've not been able to hear from them. There are people who have been targeted also, who have been survivors, our soldiers also. And I'm not talking about the senior officials, I'm talking about the men who are in the thick of the warfare, also feel that their brothers, their comrades have been taken. In considering all of this, I'm thinking to myself, do you support the fact that these officials think that this will open a door to a peace deal? And what do you consider peace in this instance?
Yes, there's a need for us to understand that this thing is based on what we are discussing is based on a report, which some of us have not read. We have not heard from the government. But let us assume that that report is correct. All over the world, every war ends as the negotiating table. Every war, no matter how very powerful you are, there's at a point in time when everybody realizes that there's no need for the war to continue, that there's no need for us to waste human beings and their human resources and then other resources. Every war ends at negotiating table. But usually what happens is that government is always, like my brother said, is always negotiating from the point of strength, so that government can determine the way the negotiation will go. If you realize that in the past 3 or 4 months, the government has intensified its war against these guys, and perhaps that is why you are seeing them coming out in their thousands to surrender because of the fire of the government. But you see, there's a need for us not to have short memories or collective amnesia. Nigeria society, it's not only in Nigeria society, I always make reference to one man they call Jerry Adams. He used to be the leader of the Sinn Féin, that is the military wing of the IRA. You know the havoc that the IRA they wreaked in that time, about 15, 20 years ago. You know, after the peace negotiation, the man ended up as a member of the parliament. So, and again, let us come back home. We all realize that there was a time when we have the Terrorism Act, also to speak, some people say we cannot compare. What was happening in the South, that the late that was the president then, had to negotiate, because at the end of the day, we had peace.
But those are two different, I'm sorry, Mr. Layoku, but those are two different things. And I can make an argument. I know that the Niger Delta militants are not here. But the amnesty program that the Niger Delta militants have is totally different from what the army is serving to terrorists who outrightly kill people because they do not want Western education.
My sister,
the militants And I'm not in any way making a case for the Niger Delta militants, but then you're taking oil from right under them. They do not have healthcare facilities. They do not have access to education. Their waters have been destroyed by these IOCs. So they're negotiating from a standpoint. I'm wondering what ISWAP's position would be asking for amnesty. Help me.
You see, the point is in war, there's something they call rule of engagement. The moment somebody comes out from the forest and he says, I'm surrendering, the army cannot do anything. They cannot open fire on them again. That is the predicament of the Nigerian government now. Because these guys came out, there's a rule of engagement. This guy came out and said, we are surrendering. And like the chief of army staff said when he came on, he said to him, he doesn't want to hear that anybody surrender. If you can catch them in the forest, hunt them down. But the moment they come out with their hands raised up and say you are surrendering, the rules of engagement said you captured this guy as a prisoner of war. So now the government is faced with a predicament. What do we do? You remember what happened?
So if they are prisoners of war, why can't they stay prisoners? Why do you have to give them houses, give them a new lease of life when people are still having to live with the consequences of their actions?
My dear sister, the moment somebody comes out, he has become a prisoner of war. There's a way you can treat that person. You see, this thing is not only peculiar to Nigeria. That is the general standard. Once somebody comes and he becomes like a prisoner of war, he is entitled to all the basic things of life. Anything short of that, the United Nations or whatever the ICC will count them guilty, pull them guilty of what they call abuse of matter. So the government is in a predicament. There's the need what the government should do now, because there are some people that joined this Boko Haram not out of their own volition. Many of them were conscripted into the Boko Haram army by force. It's either they captured them or they captured their wives, their children. So I think what the government needs to do is to profile them. Who are the real commanders? Who are the people who actually went into the war with their eyes open? Some people were coerced to join in. So I think that is what the government should do, to profile them, to know those who actually perpetrated this act out of their own volition, and not those who are captured and then compelled to go into this war. So it will be difficult for government to capture about 2,000, 3,000 people and say they want to drag them to court. Many of these guys who joined the Boko Haram because they were forced to join. We have had the cases of abduction and stuff like that. So I think what the government needs to do now, the issue of capturing everything has now ended with the military. Everything now boils down to government. This is where government comes in. And let me tell you, the issue of negotiating with Boko Haram didn't start just today. So, because like I said, it has always been there, negotiating. So it has always failed. How then can we trust these guys? That is the important thing. So what the government needs to do, and that is where the intelligence agency needs to come into play.
Okay.
How did this guy individually join Boko Haram? Were they coerced into joining, or they joined out of their position? What was their level of culpability? Those are the things that the government will do by now. But while they are in the custody of the government to make sure they are entitled to basic amenities of life. It is not the government doing it. It is the general standard of rule of engagement in any war situation. And if the government doesn't...
Dixon here seems to disagree with you when you say that they're entitled to, the basic means or amenities, the means of livelihood. So he's a soldier. He's a soldier. He used to be a soldier, so he can tell us from a soldier's perspective. But of course, you have a right to your opinion, and this is what you strongly believe in. But Dixon?
There are different mechanisms in curtailing with rule of engagement, like you actually said. But for me, I don't think rule of engagement simply means when your enemy surrenders, you pick him up, give him a bath, and house him. That's wrong and erroneous. For us to get the clarity about rule of engagement, we first of all need to look at the causative factors. What led to this war? What are the causational factors, causative factors that led to this war? Is it an ideological driven war? Is it that the federal government, deprived these people of their rights? Is it that the federal government deprived them of their natural resources, their oil, or whatever the case may be? But these are guys that pick up arms and stage an insurrection against the Nigerian state, killed a lot of human beings, killed a lot of soldiers, killed a lot of people. Okay, we cannot end this war by military might, and anywhere in the world, military might cannot end terrorism. But what I've advised the government to do, if you're looking at DDR, demobilization, disarmament, and reintegration is the last resort, in bringing these guys back to the society. You can't just pick them up, shower them, give them house, and reintegrate them, or sometimes maybe send them abroad or whatever the case may be. If you do that, like I already said, you are certifying criminality, and you are not going to, eliminate the causative factors that led to this war. So we must eliminate these causative factors so that in the next 5-10 years, another group of people will not raise an insurrection against the Nigerian state. Now, these guys that are surrendering, What should the government do to these guys? First of all, they disarm these guys, that disarmament. Then they demobilize these guys, take them off from the battlefield, or by surrendering or forcefully capturing them. Then, if you want to carry out a reintegration process, they must be punished for their crime. They must go through punishment. Even if the government says, okay, guys, we are going to give you guys amnesty, but definitely you guys are definitely going to pay for this crime. 2 years imprisonment, 3 years imprisonment. If you don't do that, if the government think they want to reintegrate these guys, because, listen to me, Mary Ann, we must be very careful. We are talking about the Nigerian state. And these criminal elements are a group of people, pockets of enemies, staging war against the Army, Navy, Air Force.
But let's not forget that there are people who've been coerced to also join that fight. I hope you know. There's certain young men and young women who became bombers, who became members of their sleeper cell, who did not outrightly stand with them, but they were forced into it.
Yeah, that's the demobilization stage. You need to interview these guys, what went wrong. Because in
but anybody can claim that he or she was coerced.
This application of psychology comes to play. I need to look at how old you are. I need to understand how long you've been in this battlefield. Now, let us just be truthful to ourselves. If the government want to address this war, they must be truthful to the Nigerian state. And if you want to think you want to give these guys, if you think the government think they want to give these guys this amnesty or whatever the case may be, they must compensate every soldier that died in the battlefield. They must compensate everyone that is injured in the battlefield. All the soldiers. My younger brother was shot in Chibok 2014 when those Chibok guys were arrested. Until today, he's still living with his scars in his leg. So they must compensate my younger brother for that gunshot, because you can't compensate a criminal and leave the victim. We have to weigh this incident. Then finally, the government must look at de-resourcing these criminal activities. Where are they getting their resources from? Because we're not even looking at de-resourcing.
But we're paying for we're negotiating with these people and paying for abductions every now and again. Who's to say that we're not funding terrorism on the other hand?
Yeah, Mary, and that is why criminality is flourishing. At the arrest of Evans, the kidnapper, that was when kidnapping took the boom. Why did kidnapping took the boom at the arrest of Evans? Simply because when Evans was arrested, the Nigerian police did not manage that incident. People got to know that Evans was making billions from kidnapping, because the risk implication attached to kidnapping, I just drive by, see a human being walking on the street, I seize him. The risk implication is very, very slim compared to the risk implication going to the bank. When last did you hear about bank robbery? When last did you hear about road robbery? Because people have got to understand that kidnapping, the risk application to kidnapping is very slim. Risk application in the sense that your life is not intensively in danger in carrying out that criminal act.
But as much as, I really understand both of your angles, but as much as we're saying we do not want to fund terrorism, if you put yourself in the shoes of the parents of these people who have been abducted or their family members, you would want to move heaven and earth to make sure that you get your family member out unhurt. Did you see the video of the children that were being bitten by the terrorists because they wanted...
I saw that video.
Exactly.
And you want such kind of people to be given amnesty?
But again, how do you also stop the funding from going to them if you are not negotiating to give them money and get your family members out? So we're in between a rock and a hard place.
Thank you very much. You see, when we talk about crime, crime is an incident that will take to the end of time. You can't eliminate crime. But as security practice determines, you must mitigate the spate of crime to as low as reasonable acceptable.
At the expense of how many deaths?
You say what?
At the expense of how many people dying?
No, that's what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say in the essence is that you must mitigate the spate of crime. Mitigating the spate of crime in the sense that you have to put in all the security application in place so that those who think they can commit crime and go scot-free will not have that opportunity. Criminal elements only need opportunity to flourish. But our government must fix in every mechanism in place to mitigate the space of criminality in Nigeria.
We have to go. Our time is up. Dikbo Olayoko is a broadcast journalist. He's a journalist. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Dikbo. And of course, Dixon Osaje is a security expert. Thank you, Dixon, for coming to the studio.
It's a pleasure being here.
All right, we'll take a short break. And when we return, the Afenifere has warned that Nigeria just might be heading for a dictatorship. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
decision point. The way your baby's presenting, we have to rush you in. And my partner at the time was like, "You going to cut her? Are you going to cut her? Is it going to leave a scar?" And I said, "Am I a belly dancer? What is the problem here?"
No, I'm vulnerable about the future of the children, the future of mine and the future of the generation of my children.
I want to have nude pictures taken.
Of you?
Yes,
Yeah,
but
we
without
have
showing my private parts. I want to put it in my front room. And they said, "You can't do that. People will be embarrassed when they came into your house." I said, "Well, it's my body and it's my front room."
All the things that we do, what is the purpose of it?
I just realized that I was more trusting before I was 6.
So many women, they just feel like I have to cook for my husband, I have to breastfeed my children, I have to pick them from school.
Because society expects
Then you
them
go
to.
home and you cry and you stop your career, you can't do anything, then you blame everybody. You took that choice.
The Pan-Yoruba socio-political organization Afenifere has warned that Nigeria may be drifting towards a dictatorial and tyrannical state, urging the federal government to shun nepotism, confront insecurity, and restructure the country. In a statement by its acting leader, Chief Ayo Adebanjo, the National Publicity Secretary, Comrade Jare Ajayi, Afenifere said that it was forced into this unpleasant conclusion in view of the various actions and pronouncements of the federal government in recent times. They stated that the dictatorial tendency of the president can be seen in his insistence to go ahead with the reopening of grazing routes and the signing of the Petroleum Industry Bill into law. Well, joining us to discuss this further is Mogaji Adejumo. He is an Afenifere chieftain. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening. It's good to be here.
Great. Why is Afenifere taking this position? This is not the first time we've heard many people actually say that the president is dictatorial in nature, the government of Nigeria is heading down that road. But why is Afenifere so certain and has decided to take this position?
It's not a new thing for us to come out this way and to make a statement categorically about the trend and the trajectory of this government, which of course is leading us into some kind of tyranny. And not only that, there's so much impunity, disregard for the rule of law, an arbitrary rule, to say the least. And of course, we can really explore all of this, and you will find out that we have only come out to say exactly what has been happening since the beginning of this administration of Major General Muhammadu Buhari in the course of governance. Nigeria is a multi-ethnic configuration, multi-religious composition, and very little is given to the rights of the indigenous people. And we have all manners of impunity. And chief of that is this fixation on grazing routes, and then the wrong nomenclature. Let's even start from there. What is exactly about the header that goes into somebody's farm uninvited, and it goes there with a cow to graze on somebody's food produce? That is no clash. That is impunity. That is criminality. So why call it farmers' headers clash? This is the 21st century. Why would you want to believe that nothing has moved since somebody drew some roots? We have had developments all over, in which case, whose roots exactly? The one that passes through an airport, and are you going to stop the plane from flying and taking off? And for crying out loud, what Abraham and Lot did 4,000 years ago, realized it wasn't going to pay, and then they had to go into some ranching. Exactly what was jettisoned 4,000 years ago is what we are reproducing in Nigeria. It is their history. So it is impunity to call it farmers-herders clash, call it by its real name. It is impunity to say that bandits are here and there abducting people. That is terrorism. You don't call them bandits. Call them by their real names. These are terrorists. And why would you want to impugn upon the laws of the land that you met and have not been repealed? In 1969, there was a judgment given in Ibadan that banned open grazing. That law has not been upturned. It is still subsisting. And so are other laws and legislation, in which case many states of the Southwest have legislated already against open grazing. And yet we still want to have a president who is so fixated on creating routes for cattle to move in this jet age when people are going to space. And that is when the fixation of this administration is about cows.
I mean, because I want to give the president the benefit of a doubt, and I'm not in any way trying to speak for the president. I'm not a presidential spokesperson. But in this regard, the president, neither is he here nor is his people here, or are his people here to help to speak on this matter. So I would be the devil's advocate on this one. What if the president, who has surrounded himself, by the way, with a lot of technocrats and personal assistants and people who know how to deal with and do some damage control, maybe what if the president has seen that this is the only solution to the issue that we're facing today, and he might at some point or to some extent douse tension, and that's why he's very insistent on this. Why don't we give him that benefit of a doubt?
We cannot, because I can remember there was a time he wanted to be president in 2011, and such a question was given to the contestants that came on a television program, and I have the tape, I have the video with me. And in 2011, he was still talking. He was talking about the grazing route. The grazing route is no solution. Let us face it. What we need is what others do, and they have been successful. The state of Israel, let me just begin to give examples now. Uncannily, is about the size of Oyo State, about 30,000 square kilometers. That is the state of Israel. But then just about the size of one of the states of the Southwest. But they produce the best meat in the whole of Europe. They don't graze. You don't go. I have been to Israel 4 times. You don't see cows on the road. They have the ranches everywhere. Even where you call the desert, they've been able to create arable farming land. And they have the best cows, the longest, the biggest, and the ones that give the best milk. Why would we want to regress thousands of years into the kind of situation in which we read about in the holy books and believe that is the solution to a 21st century problem? If we have a problem, it is about creating solutions, fixing the problem. If we have those who want to simply feel free to go and destroy other people's lands, we treat them as criminals. That is the way to do. It's not to give them the permit. And let us face it, there are northern governors, northern senators that have openly said this open grazing thing shouldn't be followed anymore. In fact, the 19 state governors actually said so at one time. I remember somebody, an official of the Senate, actually said that it's not going to be possible to be talking about grazing routes. They said all of that, but Mr. President wouldn't listen. So it is not for the lack of the kind of advocacy that will suit a situation that we have in Nigeria. Is about the obstinacy of Mr. President in wanting to do what he thinks is the solution. Okay. And of course, this is nothing to be sentimental about. This is a Fulani and he identifies with this group. I have no problem with that. I'm a Yoruba man. I identify with my people. But that is not to now make my people to impugn upon the rights of others simply because I am a Yoruba man. I remember when President Obasanjo, a Yoruba man, was in government, and there were issues of insecurity and family situated in the corner of the Ore Onakakanfo, Iba Gani Adams, when the OPC was found to have been involved in certain insecurity. The president did, President Obasanjo then, he did what was needful. In fact, he went to the extent of issuing a shoot-on-sight order on the convener of the OPC, and when they caught him, he was in detention.
But the presidency has done that. But there has also been, with due respect, sir, the president has done the same in this instance. Let him be scientific.
He has done so. Let him be scientific.
Well, the president at some point declared a shoot at sight for these bandits and terrorists. He did so sometime this year. So let's give him that benefit of doubt. But because of time, let's move to the PIA, which used to be the PIB. Now, the Afenifere also seem to touch on that. You seem to have an issue with, the PIA. What are your concerns?
Well, the truth of the matter is this. Nigeria is not exactly a federal state, because if it were, then we wouldn't even be having a PIB in the first instance. It's being run as a unitary state. This petroleum, the crude oil, is situated on somebody's land, and it is their land. And the only thing that can happen in a federation, a true federation, is to have the people who administer where such things are found in situ to pay taxes and perhaps to remit part of the proceeds to the center. But you don't take over the whole thing and ascribe 3% to the communities and then 30% to the river basin authorities, of which we have almost twice the number in the north. It is not just right. You just don't trample upon the principle of federalism. And that is the reason why we will always have to question the structure. And that is why we will always have people agitating, not for self-control, not for resource control anymore, but for self-determination, if they are not going to be given the little things that really matter in a true federal state. And that is part of why we believe that this country is now being run on the basis of dictatorship.
But can we also blame the PIA on, can we solely keep this blame on Mr. President's table? Because this bill that became law was legislated by people who represent us and people who represent the people who have the oil right under them. So can we really say that it's Mr. President's problem? He only has to assent to it. And there are several lawmakers on the floor of the National Assembly, both on the upper house and the lower house. Is this really the president's problem?
Oh, now let us look at it critically. I started by saying that we have a problem with the structure and that we are not truly practicing what is called true federalism. And let us look at it critically. In the municipality of Kano City in the 60s, they had only 2 local governments. In the Principality of Lagos, in the 60s, we had 4 local governments. And in the 70s, Lagos was even increased to 6. But today we have only 20 local governments, while we now have Kano and Jigawa that was taken out of it, having close to 100 local governments. And that is about representation. And that is the problem we have with a structure that is so defective. When you go to the House of Assembly, what do you find? You find that the southern states are 17, the northern states are 19. There's a lopsidedness. But then it does not only end there, it ends with representation. There are over 100 in terms of number of those who represent the North over the South in the House of Reps. And if you go to the Senate, there are 6 senators because of the 1917 dichotomy. 6 senators that the North have over the number that we have in the South. And if you add Abuja to it, it becomes 7. So there's nothing you take there that should favor what is called equity, that will be found to be useful because of the sheer number that they will throw at us. And once they throw the number, they can pass the bill. And it only behooves on a president who believes in equity, who believes in equality, who believes that there should be no inequity, that such a bill is not put to law, looking at the fact that we have seen this president refusing to sign even certain bills that have been on his table for the past 2 years. Why quickly run to put his accent to this particular bill? And I'll tell you something else.
Quickly, because we have to go.
Sorry, let me just finish this because this is very important. A group in the North actually congratulated the members of the National Assembly from the North for doing what they call the right job of making sure that the bill was passed in both houses that gave the North an edge over the South. So the president went ahead and put his accent to inequality. And that is the point we are making. The structure itself is bad. The constitution itself is bad. Afenifere has said that many times, that we cannot continue with this defective structure. We cannot continue with this defective constitution. And there's no point in trying to patch a tire that has suffered 100 punctures. All we have to do is change completely, make a new constitution. We cannot continue with this bad structure. This country, believe me, is teetering towards being a failed state. And all because of the bad structure, all because of the defective constitution.
Well, we want to thank you. Mogaji Adejumo is an Afenifere chieftain, and we want to thank you for being part of this conversation.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, thank you all for staying with us. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, I will give you my take. It's time for my take. So it's very shocking that we take a lot of decisions without consulting the Nigerian people. This is what we call a democracy, but then the government is not for the people, it's not by the people, it's not in the interest of the people, unfortunately. So we've been asking for restructuring day in, day out, and we've even politicized the word restructuring because now it means different things to different people. How do people get the kind of government that they deserve, the kind of governance that they need if the government is not listening to the people? Where is the room for a tete-a-tete with the people who lead us? If government is not going to listen to us, who are you governing if the governed does not feel heard? How are we going to be reopening our doors to people who have killed, who have maimed, who have destroyed our means of livelihood, taken our homes from us? We've had to run away from places that we once knew as home because a group of people said they do not want Western education. And today, it's easy for our governments and our leaders and even our security agencies to come up with an idea. And I'm not in any way saying that it's wrong for us to try to rehabilitate people who say that they're repentant. But how easy is it going to be for the people who've lost children, who've lost husbands, who've lost brothers, the soldiers who are fighting at the edge of this war, trying to keep our borders safe? How easy will it be for these people to accept these so-called repentant people back into society? Are we making the right choices here? But yes, we want to win the war against this insurgency. Yes, we want to put an end to terrorism, but are we going about it the right way? So I want our governments to do the right thing. Think about it because Nigerians are watching and you will hear from us soon. I am Mariana Cole, thanking you for watching.
Nigeria, by extension, Africa, is faced with a lot of challenges. The growing youth population with little engagement, that is a ticking time bomb. We are a blessed people with diverse culture and highly cerebral minds who have a lot to say. And yes, we are talking. It is important we drive the right conversation that informs, inspires, influences thought and action. If we say there's beauty in our diversity, then let us embrace our diverse culture. We must continue to courageously be the voice of transformation as we are the hope for the future. Yesterday's conversations shape today. What are you saying to shape your tomorrow? We know you have a lot to say, and we are here to hear you.
What we do not understand, we will stigmatize.
What you can see is the remaining of the tanker that exploded.
The suspect equally confessed